Welcome back. Well, yes, so many things happening as we started earlier. Sometimes when this news break, some of the things you thought was rational, you even begin to question whether or not you thought right, as it were, because of how those events play out. You thought you could easily connect the dots and know the next steps, but you never really know. Well, this morning, as you've seen there, we're joined by Mr. Falana, Senior Advocate of Nigeria. Good morning, sir. Thank you for coming on today.
Good morning.
Quite a lot, really. But for instance, Kuje, we know that you're no stranger to Kuje prisons. It's a maximum security prison, and the news coming through from those who were around the place when it happened at the night. Terrorists, they said about 300 of them attacked the place, seized the place. They were terrified. They freed Boko Haram captives into the city of Abuja. At the same time, and it's almost in the same breath, the president's convoy was attacked, his advance team, some casualties there. And then kidnappers, terrorists again, Ekwa pastor, 3 others kidnapped, 8 in Kaduna. Then you see some in Kwara, and you just... Can you place a finger on some of these things?
Well, these are very, very disturbing developments. I know Kuje prisons very well. I was detained there in 1992, and then in 1993, together with the late Chief Ganifa Wemi, the late Dr. Belko Ransom Kuchi, and Baba Mojola, in 1993. It's a small maximum security prison, almost the most secured in the country of all our correctional centers. So if terrorists who launch a successful attack and release prisoners, the situation calls for a general review of the security architecture in the country. I mean, these coordinated attacks, clearly there are serious problems that the government has refused to address with respect to the security of the country. I mean, here was a regime that promised Nigerians that, because the president is a former general, is going to address this problem frontally. But we can't see it. We can't see it. Apart from the regular press statements oozing out of the villa, assuring Nigeria of the security of the life and property of everybody here. Out there, no one is secure. No one is safe. And so, for me, we have to go back to the drawing table as a people. Can we go on like this? Having regards to the political implications, the economic implications.
Before we go to those economic and political implications, Mr. Falana, do you think, I maintain this, that we have an intelligence community that has intelligence? Just yesterday, we were speaking to a security consultant and a former Army PRO who said, look, they always get information. The question is, what are we doing about it? My question to you, Mr. Falana, is, do you think our adherence or use of this information or not is actually significantly factoring in the lives of the soldiers and the security personnel that we put in jeopardy every day by not acting as we should?
Now, I can tell you this, even though I'm critical of some of the systems, I mean the security agencies, but I can tell you, without any fear of contradiction, that the government receives intelligence reports very regularly. In fact,
how regularly?
The State Security Service, as I did note recently, has almost been compelled to go public and warn Nigerians that churches and mosques and some other places might be attacked. And those institutions have been attacked. I then urged the federal and state governments to pay more attention to intelligence reports. So there's a lot of intelligence gathering But whether the authorities, take advantage of them to secure the country is another matter entirely. I think there's a lot of lackadaisical attitude on the part of the government, apart from issuing statements, either to condemn terrorist attacks or express sympathy with victims and the rest of them. But beyond that, what steps are being taken by the government to be ahead of the terrorists and other, armed gangs in the country? Every government must control the monopoly of violence. Every government. But here, the criminal elements have taken over and they are now in firm control of violence in the country. And that requires the authorities to really sit down and address the problem. The solutions are available. The solutions are available.
Because these things have implications.
Because security is technology driven now. You can sit down here and monitor what goes on in the entire country.
That's why I asked.
With the advantage of drones.
That's why I asked Mr. Falana, are we even considering the lives of the people, our security personnel, that we put in jeopardy every day, who have to die?
No. Unfortunately. I defend soldiers who were army officers who were or who are used or sacrificed by the authorities to give the impression, these are the guys sabotaging the war efforts. I defended some scores of soldiers in 2014. And I had to ask the members of the court martial, these guys are asking for weapons to fight the terrorists. Where are the weapons? The money meant for procurement of weapons stolen by people you know. Of course, they sentenced them to death for asking for weapons to fight. And of course, we had to harass the authorities and produce evidence of the fact that those who should be standing trial are walking free in town. Just a couple of months ago, we got 70 soldiers pardoned by the government, and a general who was demoted. He lost a rank. But again, that was 2 months ago. Do you know that those who were pardoned, including those who are in custody, up to now, do not know their fate? You can't run a system like that. That you pardon people 2 months ago and they're still in prison custody. Do you run a system like that? So we ask soldiers to fight for our country. We ask police personnel to defend our country. And yet, the government does not make any serious provision for them. So these are the problems. So the motivation to fight, the motivation to defend the country is not there. Yet, these people are reading stories about billions of naira stolen. So when you tell soldiers, we have no money to buy equipment, so please just manage, with what we have. And they read that somebody has stolen 80 billion naira. Or a former chief of army staff has stolen millions of naira, thousands of dollars. And you find in his house about vehicles worth 500 million naira. So you want the soldiers to clap? So the government will have to show commitment to the defense of the country. Our governors have to wake up and insist today requisition a meeting of the Nigerian Police Council.
So they can start from there?
Oh, yes.
Even without the president attending?
No, they have to make him attend. The president is a member. He's the chairman. There are 39 members.
What if
the 36 state governors?
If he refuses to attend, what happens?
No, they can't. If he refuses, it's a majority, it's democracy. But we can't go on like this. If you have a body that's supposed to administer, supervise, and organize the Nigerian police force, according to the Constitution. That body never meets. So everybody, the president was saying the other day, sometimes last year, oh, 2 governors came to me from the southwest to complain about insecurity. I asked them, go back to your state and secure your people. Then you have to take steps to secure your people. I mean, just last Sunday, the governor of Zamfara State, out of frustration, asked his people, go and defend yourself. Go and apply for police permit to bear guns. When a country gets to that level, we're in trouble. And so you must then sit down with relevant agencies, with appropriate organs of the government, and allow them to work and do their work. So if we have the Nigerian Police Council meeting regularly to review the security situation in all parts of the country, it's going to be a different.
Okay, Markwe's got some questions for you. Markwe?
Indeed, Mr. Falana has just gone to just where I was going to head to, which is Zamfara. He talked about how, you know, the government must always have monopoly of violence. Clearly, that monopoly of violence is no longer that of government alone. I mean, it's been breached. We've now seen the proliferation of small and light weapons in the hands of those who ought not to have them, and they're certainly wreaking havoc everywhere. So in the light of what our new development is, and in the light of some of the steps that we've seen taken by or being proposed by governors whom have been asked to also take care of security in their places, would you say that it is out of place that is there any part of our laws which prohibit this directive, which some governors are now proposing and have received the support from other places? What is your take on the directive that the governor of Zamfara State has issued?
Well, it is not, as far as the Constitution is concerned, there shall be only one police force, Nigerian police force, and no other security agency will be allowed. But in 2003, President Olusegun Obasanjo decided to set up another police force, civil defense. At that time, personally, I alerted some governors to take advantage of the establishment of the Civil Defense Corps to demand for establishment of state police. The advice was not taken. That body was created by the federal government. Later, agencies like the EFCC, ICPC, Customs, immigration officials, and all of them, federal safety, are allowed to bear arms. But when it comes to state agencies, security agencies created by state government, the federal government says no. Individuals can apply to bear arms, to defend themselves and members of their family. But when it comes to giving out licenses for about 10,000 people, young people, to defend about 20 million people in Lagos, oh, they say it's illegal. So the governors will have to go, if possible, to courts to challenge such discriminatory practices, to challenge the policy of the federal government, to waste the lives of the rest of our people. I have also read where governor complained that they wanted to acquire drones. The National Security Advisor did not approve the application. And I asked myself, for goodness sake, why are you applying to a National Security Advisor? He's only an advisor to the president on security. The governor is elected. The governor is elected. He's the chief security officer of his state. So if you refuse to, I mean, I'm for a governor. What's my business with going to the office of the NSA? I will have, the president had asked me, go and secure your state. I said, Mr. President, I need a drone to secure my state. So if you don't give me the license, I will go to court. Because the whole idea is while I can understand the frustration of the governor of Zamfara State, we also must ensure that we do not turn Nigeria to the United States of America, where you are currently experiencing mass shooting of people. This year alone, over 400 people have been killed in America because everybody, including madmen, can bear arms. So we don't want Nigeria to descend to that level. What we are simply saying, since the federal government can no longer save people in the country, you must allow state governments, you must allow other agencies to acquire the necessary equipment to guarantee the life and the security of everybody. That's the way to go. That is the way to go.
Would you
and
say,
that is why the governors will have
say
to
that perhaps the Zamfara State Governor, I don't know if you can hear me, that the Zamfara State Governor is perhaps hiding behind a finger. That before now, there have been states who have been able to get the federal government to import weapons for their state, for the police in their state. And Lagos is one of those states where they were able to, successfully get the federal government to let them bring in weapons to equip properly the police in Lagos State. I do not know if, how many more states have tried that example, but is this something that you would also recommend?
Well, I'm aware of the case of Lagos. I think under Governor Fashola, whereby you had these sea robbers who were robbing banks, and the governor took advice and rushed to Abuja to ask for license to import certain equipment, and that was how that problem was solved. And I'm also aware that in a place like Borno State, you can't ask members of the civilian JTF to confront terrorists with bare arms, and so the government has also in that state allow members of the civilian JTF to bear arms, to have licenses to bear arms, and so that must go round. Otherwise, the government will be accused of discrimination.
Well, one is wondering.
So certainly there certainly are other solutions which have not been explored, apart from, asking citizens to bear arms. But there are those who are saying that, if already arms are already in the hands of those who seek to wreak havoc, isn't it only fair that, people who are law-abiding, isn't it only fair that it be made easier for them to be able to purchase these arms?
Now, for law-abiding citizens, I am saying there's a lot of problems with the way people are allowed to bear arms in the country. You can apply as a responsible citizen, responsible journalist, to the authorities. I want to bear arms. I want the license. They will give you. But they may not give me. They will give you, right? Now, if individuals can be given, a few people, how can you justify the denial of licenses for 10,000 young men, members of the neighborhood watch in Lagos, to protect 20 million people? And that is why I'm saying the governors must go to court. Where licenses are denied to bear weapons, governors must go to court. Where you are not allowed to import drones to monitor on a daily basis, hourly basis, the activities of criminal element, you must go to court. Again, you don't need to go to court. You don't need any permission to import CCTV cameras and install them in public places. I think the Ondo State government has just come to that conclusion after the Owo attack. We need to have CCTV cameras all over the place. You don't need the permission of Abuja to have screening machines in public places, in offices. So these are areas we have to review now.
What does the law say, Mr. Falana, about self-defense?
Self-defense is allowed by law. The Constitution allows you, I think Section 33, subsection 2, you are empowered to protect yourself. If danger is coming, you are permitted by law, right?
The question then is
to
how?
Prevent it.
The question then is how?
But it is not a license. That provision of the Constitution and the relevant provisions of the Criminal Code and the Penal Code on right to self-defense does not mean that everybody should bear arms in the country. No. It is that if somebody is going to attack you with a gun and you can get a stone to attack him before attacking you, or you can prevent the attack, the law, if he dies in the process,
or any legal,
and the force used by you is reasonable, the law will excuse you.
Even if it's the legal gun that you have.
It doesn't matter. If you can just
defend yourself.
Yeah, well, it doesn't matter. If you can save your life or save the life of other people, some other person, the law allows you. And you, even if you are charged with murder, you'll be freed. Because the force used was reasonable. But the point I'm making, that is not a license for everybody to bear arms.
Still talking security, Mr. Falana, because I know we'll take a short break now and then we may not go back to it. There are those, I just want to get your own perspective on this much talked about first line of defense in the local government systems that we don't have. Security agencies have talked about it, and governors that you say should go to court themselves don't seem to be well disposed to autonomous local governments, which many have said if the local government systems were as functional and as active as they ought to be, they will probably have their own ways of defending their territories. Everyone knows everyone. The traditional rulers will be as active as they ought to be. And then the insecurity situation we have will not be as bad as it is, especially in the rural localities.
Well, I think the whole idea is that people in every community know themselves. And therefore, if any visitor comes to a community, you can monitor him or her or report strange movement to the police or security agency. That's the whole idea of trying to localize security. If you empower the local governments to perform that function, we'll get better results. In those days, if prisoners were going to be released from custody, you are going to ask them, where are you going to? And you will monitor where they are going to stay. And you will alert the police and the authorities there. Some prisoners who have just been released are coming to your community. Please monitor them to ensure that they do not go back to criminality. I had an experience. I was just talking about the soldiers. The soldiers that were convicted and sentenced to death, we got their sentences reduced to 10 years imprisonment. When they were released, in Kirikiri and Ikoyi Correctional Center, they were just asked to go. No provision for them to get to their homes. Nobody really bothered where they were going to go to. So they rushed to my office. And we have to arrange fun for them to go home. So that is part of the problem we are going through. There's no monitoring of the activities of our people. And our people are also not enlightened to report strange movements. There was an incident in Lagos where terrorists invaded the city, Lagos State, with about 17 boxes of explosives. But as they were landing, this was in 2013, members of the public alerted the government. And the government moved in security forces. These guys were arrested, and quietly, I think, Governor Fashola rushed to Abuja. Please, are you ready to prosecute these people, since this is a federal offense? Or you want us to do it? So we have no time for prosecuting anybody in Lagos. Okay. Give us the fiat to prosecute them. And of course, the governor got the fiat, ordered the attorney general, arraigned these people. They were all taken to Badagry High Court, where they were tried, sentenced to 30, 40 years imprisonment. Right? Lagos didn't make didn't announce it so that these criminals would not have the impression that the place is so penetrable. So we just have to sit up. Our governors have to take advantage of their positions. Right now, on a regular basis, the police arrest, parade criminal suspects, including terrorists, ritual murder suspects, and the rest of them. At the end of the day, nothing happens. So the attorneys general in the states will have to take the question of prosecuting, criminal suspects much more seriously than what we are currently going through.
We'll come back and talk about some other matters in just a moment. Don't go away. Welcome back. Well, Mr. Falana, I heard some suggest that maybe the reason why governments have to apply to the office of the NSA is that if they're importing armored drones, they have to require end-user certificates, and that's perhaps why they need to go to the NSA's office for that. So wouldn't that be in order for them to apply to him?
Well, I'm just saying that the NSA cannot refuse an application to import necessary equipment to secure our people. Cannot. And if he does, he has to be challenged. But that's what democracy is about. Rule of law. You go to court and challenge them. Yes.
Okay. Now, this other matter about the place of vice presidential candidates of political parties, because some of them have said, look, in a couple of days, we will replace our candidates. But there are specific rules concerning that. So is it that we're making a mountain out of a molehill of what the political parties want to do? Because some are even saying that they will go to court and ensure that those parties who plan to do that will not or should not be allowed to do that if they don't comply with the laws.
I think we are congesting the courts unnecessarily, turning our courts into political institutions where the law is very clear. You really don't need to engage in unnecessary litigation. You are drawing the judiciary to the political arena, which is unnecessary. Under the Electoral Act, even the Constitution, anybody can withdraw. Even a candidate, even a presidential candidate can withdraw. A presidential candidate or anybody can die. So there are provisions under the law. As far as the Electoral Act is concerned, majority of the political parties have met the requirement of the law. I.e., when you are submitting the name of the presidential candidate, you also must include the name of his or her vice presidential candidate. If, for any reason, the vice presidential candidate withdraws, in line with the provisions of the law, it's to write, sign a letter personally, I'm no longer interested. That's all. That's all. And there's room for replacement. You may run into problems if you submit the substitution after the time allowed by law. But it's not a big deal, really. It's not a serious problem.
So, but then that process, would you say then that that's the gap or the opening that is being exploited with the term placeholder?
No, I think there is no provision for placeholder.
That's why I said term.
Yeah, there is no such provision. Right. What the Constitution recognizes is that it's not even the Electoral Act, it's the Constitution, that your nomination will not be valid. I mean, if you're a presidential candidate, a governorship candidate, if you don't have a deputy. Yeah, that's what the law is saying. And before the time allowed for substitution, you can do that. You can substitute.
Now, in the place of a presidential candidate, a completely new primary is expected to be conducted according to the law.
Yes.
What happens in the place of a vice presidential candidate or a deputy governor?
No, there's no provision for a primary. No. Because it's part of the ticket of the president.
So
of the presidential
happens?
candidate.
What happens?
No, you simply replace. Now, that's the law. That's the law. If in the case of a senator, if you didn't take part in a valid primary, you are out. No matter how highly placed you may be. As what we are witnessing in Yobeno Senatorial District. The primary has been concluded. Or in Akwa Ibom. There's no way a Senator Akpabio or a Senator, the Senate President, can now insist we are the candidates of our party. No. So the law is very clear on each of these.
But they're saying that Akwa Ibom cannot say that the party cannot send the list of the candidate. That if we send our list, you accept it as INEC.
No. Under the Constitution, Section 285, subsections 13 and 14, the INEC is empowered to take decisions on nominations. So INEC has spent a colossal sum of money to witness your primary and has written a report submitted to the national headquarters. Now, while compiling the list, you bring strange names of those who never took part in the primaries. So INEC has the right to say, sorry, this is different from what we witnessed. We monitor the election. We have the authentic results. So we're not going to allow you to bring it in. It is now for the party or the aggrieved aspirant to go to court, and not the other way around. INEC has gone beyond, we can only be a witness in court to tender our report. No. You are to take a decision by removing illegal names from the list of contestants.
So INEC is no longer just an observer.
No. INEC is now empowered to take a decision. And anybody who is dissatisfied with the decision of INEC with regards to nomination will have to go to court.
I think that needs to be clear, made
it's in the law.
Unequivocally clearer. That's tautology, I know, but it needs to be re-emphasized because you remember that conversation we had. So the law says that the party should present the list. One of the questions we asked...
the party will present the list of those who participate in valid primaries.
I'm coming,
Section
yes,
29.
exactly. They conduct a valid primary and the party will, from that valid primary, present the list of the candidates.
Yes.
Now, what has happened, from the things that you heard about what happened in Abia State, what would you make of it? There are those who say, okay, so INEC got a particular list, which they found out later to be fake. And then there's, also having been misled by by some representation, there was a judgment that validated a list that is not right. And they've now found out later and all that. But what do you make of it? What exactly happened there? Because would they have been able to present a fake list to INEC, which INEC would validate if the process that you talked about, was followed?
You see, once we follow the provisions of the law, there shouldn't be any problem. INEC must monitor the primary. The parties are allowed to conduct the primaries. The results are announced. INEC has monitored the primary. INEC has the report of the primary. So if a strange name is brought to the INEC of a person who never took part in the primary, INEC is not bound to accept that name. INEC can say, this is our report. Yes.
Okay. Well,
INEC will reject. INEC is empowered to reject.
Just this one. What
this.
exactly happened in Abia that informed a court making a pronouncement that brought a list that INEC, had to accept?
You see,
because it's a court order.
You see, if there are court orders, right, and INEC is convinced that that court order was anchored on misrepresentation, which occurs regularly, INEC will have to go to court. Or aggrieved parties will have to go to court. Say, sorry, my lord, you were misled into making the order. Can you please quash it, or we go on appeal? That's the law. But INEC cannot say, we are not going to comply with a court order.
Okay.
But that would be anarchy.
Now, in conclusion, yesterday I said to the Army Chief on the show that when this kind of attack on security now, connecting to elections, I did ask him, look, it doesn't appear as though some people seem to be testing grounds or testing their resolve or testing certain things when they carry out certain attacks. Because some time ago in Kaduna, they said some terrorists had threatened politicians or some people in those areas, don't come here to campaign. Don't do certain things here. And that's been on for a while. Now, if you extrapolate that, one wonders, could that be, perhaps, should we take that seriously or how much so? Because we're approaching general elections. Now, if they're attacking these quote-unquote supposedly secure targets, they're softer targets. When people come out for elections or for campaigns, they don't have as much security as the areas that they've attacked now. So there could be some implications or otherwise that what happens if they attack all those areas and then in the build-up to elections, they seem to frustrate the process. And then, could we have a scenario in our hands where there will be no elections?
You know, in 2015, the Jonathan administration was compelled to postpone the election because the terrorists were occupying some local governments in Borno State. Right now, the terrorists are occupying places, local government in Zamfara, in Katsina, in Borno and some other places, in Niger State. Now, that's problematic. And during elections, if you have such a situation, there are candidates who may say, those are my catchment areas. So you can't go on with the election if you cannot secure the entire country. Wow. There will be a problem there. Right now, I mean, even for the primary, I know a candidate in Zamfara who had to come to Abuja to campaign. He couldn't campaign in his state.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, you had the recent election in Ekiti State where you had about 25,000 police men and women. That is not possible in a general election. No state is likely to have more than 5,000, police personnel during election. And they cannot secure some of the states today. And that is why people are worried. Because under the Constitution, if the country is waging a war, the election can be postponed. Not more than 6 months at a time. So there are problems already.
Do you see that happening?
Of course. Of course. And with all these multiple attacks, and the government is helpless, what do you think will happen? But again, this is where the National Assembly will have to come in.
Well, the National Assembly took a position on, excuse me, you're talking about local governments, took a position and recommended that local governments should be financially, excuse me, and administratively autonomous.
See, it goes beyond that.
Yes, but, if we had the governors agree and the Houses of Assembly pass the bills for the local government autonomy, wouldn't that be something? I also believe that the local government, the governors are averse to it.
You see, it's been passed. In most federations, you really don't have autonomous local governments. But if, as it is in Nigeria, what is important here before we divert, right? Because that's not the issue. Section 305 of the Constitution requires the president to declare a state of emergency in the situations we have found ourselves. And once that is done, the president will need the approval of the National Assembly. They have to ratify the declaration. And after 6 months, the president must go back to the National Assembly so that they can monitor the situation, review the situation, and decide whether to extend the state of emergency. But right now, it's all illegality that is going on. Without declaring a state of emergency, you are sending troops. No, the law didn't envisage that. The Constitution empowers the president to take extraordinary measures to protect and restore law and order in every part of the country. But that has not happened since 2015. Before then, President Jonathan was going to the National Assembly upon a declaration of a state of emergency, particularly in 3 states then, Borno, Adamawa, and I think Yobe. Now, we've gone to other parts of the country. So, in order to address these problems, the president must declare a state of emergency. The National Assembly must draw his attention to his powers under the Constitution and the limit of his powers. Now, you can't just send troops without a state of emergency to go and, stop a student protest or, send soldiers to Lekki. It's unknown to the Constitution.
Wait, will he be thinking about the answer he gave to British Prime Minister who asked him if he was going to go for a 3rd term and say, no, I don't want this to be interpreted as though I want to extend my term by declaring, this is all, allowing the election to be postponed? That's the president now.
Yeah, the president will, from what he has said, we must believe him, that he doesn't want a 3rd term. In fact, the way he said it was that the man who asked for a 3rd term, has not recovered from the shame or the embarrassment. So I want to believe, but the crisis on ground, the president will have to take extraordinary measures to make that impossible, to make extension of his tenure impossible, by calling all the relevant stakeholders to take some decisive measures to restore law and order in the country. Right now, some states, some local governments in the country are occupied. For farmers to go to their farm, they pay ransom. They pay. Some have to recruit young men to follow them to the farm. They pay taxes to criminal elements. You can't hold elections in those places. And so, beyond the assurance to the British Prime Minister, the president must come home and address the crisis of instability, the crisis of insecurity on ground.
We'll anchor at that point. Mr. Femi Falana, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, thank you very much indeed for your time.
Thank you very much. My pleasure.
Well, back in a moment. Join us again.